to the first episode of the Fight Chatter podcast. And because this is the first episode, let me kind of give you a little bit of an explanation on the podcast. The reason why I decided to start doing a podcast is I felt like maybe it would be easier for me to just get on and talk about some things with boxing, maybe tell a couple of stories and whatnot, as opposed to writing articles all the time. Not that I'm not going to write articles. I'm definitely still going to write articles on the Substack. I'm going to write articles for Boxing Talk. On the Substack, I'm going to write more opinionated articles that are basically my own opinion. And I'm also going to focus on local boxing. State of Utah, maybe some Idaho, maybe some of the northern Nevada. I have a lot of friends that I might bring on. It's not always going to be just an auto recording. Every once in a while I will do a video recording, especially if I have a guest. Maybe it will be someone like Doug Gibson from Plan 9 Crunch, or Simon Ruvalcaba, or a veteran boxer, a promoter, somebody else. Then we might go video, but for this weekly podcast, I'm just going to do audio. I'm not a music guy, so you're probably not going to hear a lot of music. I don't do any midis or anything like that. You're not going to get anything political on this podcast. As my wife, who is a special ed teacher, would say, not my monkeys, not my circus. So that's to kind of give you a little introduction to the podcast and why I am doing it. So the first thing I'd like to go over today is the all-heart boxing card at the Golden Spike Arena in Ogden, Utah. That's happening this Saturday. Doug Gibson of Plan 9 Crunch has a very great article on it. Doug is a great resource for me on Utah boxing because he is basically the fight writer for Utah boxing. He knows everybody likes him. I have kind of a little bit of a past here in Utah. Not that people don't like me or anything, but because I've done so many different things, I haven't done a lot of my journalism here in Utah. I've done more of my fights. I've worked corners. I've promoted some fights. So that's kind of why I don't know like some of the intricacies of some of these and histories of some of these young fighters. So to kind of go off of what Doug's put on here, he's got a great article. I will put the link on here. Salt Lake City's Julian Ruiz is going to be having his second pro fight. Julian Ruiz is a fighter who also fights MMA. A lot of fighters around here do that. A lot of fighters everywhere do that. They do multiple combat sports. In MMA, he is 4-2. He's fought for the PFL. He's fought for Fierce Fighting Championship. So he's very experienced in different fighting. This is his second boxing match. Julian is scheduled right now to fight William Worthland, who is making his pro debut. Also on the card, as mentioned earlier in the Substack and on the YouTube channel, Sean Cross is making his professional boxing debut. Got a great interview with him. He's very nice, very down-to-earth guy. Right now, he's in Las Vegas with Izzy Mangrum, which I'll go over her bout in a second here. But Isaiah Rodriguez is off the card. Isaiah announced that on his social media last night. Unfortunately, he will not be fighting. Isaiah was looking to get back into having a winning record. Right now, he's at 500. He's was looking to get up to get a winning record. I know the phone's been ringing for him to fight, but he wanted to build his record a little bit before going back on the road. Nothing wrong with that. Makes it so there's more money, more opportunities, those types of things. Unfortunately, this one just didn't happen. Something happened with his opponent. Kind of happens sometimes on these smaller cards. And when you're in the lower weight classes like that, it's hard for a promoter to find a replacement, especially last week of the card. A lot of those fighters, they're dropping 10 to 18 pounds to make weight from their walking around weight, if not more. I remember Nonito Donaire used to walk around at about 140 pounds and then drop all the way down to flyweight, which would have been about 30 pounds at times that he was dropping. That is extremely difficult. Anyways, there's a lot of really good fights on this card. Bobby Tabali is on the, I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, is on the card again. He's fighting Jacob Diaz. Jacob Diaz fought on the last All Heart card as well. Jacob Diaz is 0-3, but don't be deceived by that. He is 0-3. He's gone the distance in all of his fights. He's got a good jab. He's got good range. He knows how to box. He knows how to survive. Bobby Tabal, he is he knows how to box. He also has good punching power. So that's an intriguing fight, and it'll be interesting if Bobby can knock out a fighter that's never been knocked out before. As I mentioned, Ellie Mangrum, another young lady that I interviewed recently, she is going to be fighting tomorrow, which is June 19th. Well, actually, this is going up on June 19th, so scratch that. She's fighting today at noon against Signe Ritz of South Texas in the 101-pound division, youth division at the Junior Olympics. Look forward to see how she does there. She is only has 5 fights, and she's going into this tournament. She fortunately got a bye. So did Signe. She got a bye as well. So this is going to be both of these young ladies' first bout of the Junior Olympics, and I'm interested to see how Ellie does. She is a tough, hard-working fighter, and I hope that she does well. So that's what's basically going on this week. I wanted to talk to you. This is kind of a little bit personal here. Today is the 14th anniversary of my fight with Dennis Stoffer. Now, nobody's really going to care about an 0-3 fighter fighting a pro debut guy who ended up being 0-1. But that was my only professional win. There's as I mentioned before, there is a story behind every fight, and there is an interesting story behind this fight and how it happened. I did not come to Utah with the intentions of fighting Dennis Stoffer that weekend. No, that was not the purpose of the trip. That was an ancillary benefit of the trip, is that I got to fight on a card that was promoted by Flash Newman. But the real purpose of the trip was I had started a relationship on an online dating service. This is pre whatever apps that are out there right now. I can't Tinder and whatnot. We were on eHarmony, and I don't even know how popular that is anymore. But I had started this online relationship with this young lady, and I had spoken to her several times on the phone. Long conversations. We had gotten to the point where we both were working, and we would send emails to each other throughout the day, venting frustrations about customers and coworkers, and just basically letting each other know how our day was going. After a while, I wanted to meet this woman in person. And so I used the fight with Dennis Stoffer as the reason to go to Utah. I called up Flash Newman, said, hey, I see that you have a card on June 18th. I would like to fight on it. I have a sponsor that will pay for my person expenses and for my opponent's person and expenses. And so Flash, with these smaller cards, you always need to have another fight because most of the boxing commissions have a minimum amount of rounds that you have to have on the card. And so Flash was willing to put me on because, heck, it was a free fight, basically. He didn't have to have there were no expenses or anything. The interesting thing is I was suspended at the time. I had fought to get off a suspension, but the New Jersey Athletic Commission had not lifted that suspension just yet. And I wasn't even sure if the fight was going to come off, but we paid Stoffer to come out. I came out, and I met this young woman. It was funny. We had to go to the weigh-in, and she was picking me up at the hotel room. She picked me up at the hotel room, took me in Ogden, took me to the weigh-in at Flash's gym in Salt Lake, and we got a chance to talk. It was kind of awkward. I'll be honest. It was kind of awkward at first because even though I had spent all this time communicating with this young woman, I still, being a nervous person sometimes around women, kind of awkward. You know how that is when you're first getting to know somebody. Even though I already knew her online, I was still had a little bit of awkwardness there. I'm not gonna lie. We get to the weigh-in and I report in, talk to Richard Montanez and the other commissioners, kind of joke around. I knew them a little bit. I hadn't lived in Utah yet. I was still living in Reno, Nevada. Kind of went through that process. I go to get on the scale, and Richard tells me I have to weigh in my shorts. No problem. I take off all my clothes. I think I'm on weight. This was a heavyweight fight, and let me premise this. I think I'm on weight because my walking around weight at the time was 190 pounds. I ate a big dinner the night before. I ate breakfast. I ate lunch. I drank about half a gallon of water before I got to the weigh-in. I got on that scale, though, and I weighed 202 pounds, and I was happy because 202 pounds is normally heavyweight. Stoffer got on the scale. He weighed 260 pounds. So right there, I had a sizable size difference, I guess. And Richard Montanez comes up to me and Rich says, Charles, you two can't fight. And I said, why not? He said, because you guys are in different weight divisions. And I said, no, I weighed in as heavyweight. And he said, not for Utah. You have to weigh 205 pounds. And so I asked him, how long do I have to make weight? And he said, we'll be here for a while. So I went out and opened up a case of water and started drinking bottles of water. I drank 12 bottles of water, went and got on the scale, and weighed in at 208 pounds. As you can imagine, because I had already drank water before going there and then drinking all that water, the first date with Carrie was very interesting after that. Not only did we go to a boxing weigh-in, we went and walked around downtown Salt Lake. And then we came back to Ogden, where we walked around Weber State University and whatnot. So she showed me a lot of landmarks. Like, this is where I got the inspiration to go back to school to be a special ed teacher. This is where this happened. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember half of the stuff that she said, because every 10 minutes I was asking her to pull over or had to go find a place to go to the bathroom because I had drank So much water. After a while, she took me back to my hotel room when I went to bed, and she came over the next morning. We went out to the monastery that's out in Huntsville, Utah, hung around there. Um, just kind of just hung out. Had a great day the next day, especially considering I didn't have to go to the bathroom so many times on Saturday. We went to the fight card. She was there. A whole bunch of my friends made a trip from Nevada. I had some friends here in Utah. They all came out, watched the fight. It was a great time. Dennis and we put on a fight that was very, very entertaining. Dennis knocked me down in the first round after I had controlled most of the round with the jab. He put me down in the first round. The second round, I came out. My cornerman tells me in between the first and second round, "Hey Charles, you were winning that round until he caught you at the end." I said, "Yeah." He said, "So don't get caught again." That's sometimes easier said than done. But then I just boxed. I got loose. I was boxing, and I was controlling the fight with the jab, mixing in a right hand here and there, just doing my thing, going through some good motions. It was a good fight. He landed some haymakers still. At one point, I knocked him down in the second round. He made it through the round, and then the third round, I just took over. I started dominating, started throwing jabs, right hands, landing punches. His nose at one point exploded, and there was just blood all over the place. It was one. He was landing good punches. I was landing good punches here. It was one of those just fun rock'em sock'em robots type fights. Interesting thing. At one, after his nose got blown up, turns out he had broken his nose, and had two black eyes, had an eye injury as well. Every time I jabbed him, he kind of turned a little bit, and the ref tells him, "Don't turn around," and he says, "What?" And then I say, "Don't turn around," and he says something to me, and I nod. I think he's repeating, "Don't turn around." And I throw a 4-punch combination. All 4 punches land, and he goes down, and he doesn't get back up. Well, after the fight, Dennis and we talked for a while. We hung out after the fight. We ended up going to dinner together. He went to dinner with some of my friends and Carrie. And he tells me while we're eating, it's just him and I were talking. He says, "So why did you tell me to go down?" And I look at him. I said, "I didn't tell you to go down. I said, don't turn around because you were turning around and flinching a lot when I was hitting you." He said, "Oh, I thought you said go down." And I thought, hey, that's a good idea because I'm hurting right now. So that's the story of my only pro win. But like I said, going back to the first part, I had come out to meet this young lady. Afterwards, after my friends left, we went back to the hotel room and nothing steamy happened. We both were not going down that road. We sat in her car and just talked for a couple hours. And afterwards, I asked her to marry me, and she agreed. Did that the first weekend. Now, we didn't get married for well over a year later. Don't think that we jumped into getting married like at the end of summer. It was a year and a couple months later that we actually got married. And she's my wife. We're still married, and we have 3 wonderful kids that and we have a very blessed, very fortunate life. I'm just gonna put it that way. It hasn't always been easy. It's been kind of like a regular boxing match where there are good times, there are bad times. Not that we argue or fight. It's just we're fighting against this thing called life that we all have. So yeah. So my only pro win, I feel like I won the title because I got that love, I got that family. If you don't know, I'm adopted, and having my kids, they're my only biological link that I know of. So it was great, and that was 14 years ago. Love you, sweetheart, if you're listening to this. And that's something I'm going to do on this podcast, is I'm going to give some personal stuff. You're going to get to know me in addition to my opinions and everything else on the sport and on sports in general. So that's going to be towards the end. That's going to be pretty much it for the podcast this week. I'm going to try to do one once a week. That's going to take the place of the weekend wrap up because, like I said, it's easier for me to sit here and talk for 10 or 15 minutes as opposed to actually writing an article. It's part me being lazy, part me just, feeling like I should reach out, and part of it's also just I want to these stories like the one I just told about me and Dennis Stoffer, and then also meeting my wife. If something happens to me, so if I don't put these stories down, they get lost forever. And part of this is also an audience for family members and whatnot. In addition to you guys getting to know me and understand where some of these opinions and some of my background comes from. So, in closing, I would also like to bring up the All Heart card again, the All Heart boxing card. Ogden, Utah, this Saturday, June 22nd at the Golden Spike Arena. If you haven't gotten your tickets, talk to a fighter, talk to Jason DeCarlo, talk to somebody about getting a ticket because, one, if you were at the last Rival Series card put on by All Heart, these are good, evenly matched fights. But also, the other part of it is, if you don't support a local promoter like this, you might look at it and say, hey, I don't want to spend the money to go to that card. I could maybe go do this, that, or the other. But I do like the fact that there are local fights. If you don't go out there and support these local promoters, the fights won't get better. The young local talent won't have a place to build their records. They'll be doing like Christian Aguirre does and just going on the road to fight, which isn't always the best. You got to support your local promoters. You got to support your local fighters. Get out there, watch some great boxing. And you never know, you might find out a story 14 years later about a fight that you saw where these two guys beat the hell out of each other. You might find out, hey, you know what? That was the weekend one of those fighters met their wives. Thank you for listening to Fight Chatter. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the Substack, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you for listening.